You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory, only at DD Fantasy Football. Check us out on the YouTube channel, the podcast feed, and then head on over to ddfantasyfootball.com. Use code THEORY. The link is below in the episode description. Get 50% off your first month. Dan, what's up, man?
Hey, good to see everybody tonight, man. Back to normal desktop setup here on the new iMac, so I'm excited. Hopefully technology cooperates. I was able to sign right on tonight, so that's good. And otherwise, just frustrated watching the Rams-Dolphins game here, man. This Rams are trying to find a way to look bad at home. I think I heard Mitch say he needs some puka tonight. That better happen soon.
Yeah, I don't know if he's getting that. Speaking of Mitch, there he is. What's going on, Mitch?
How you doing? I'm not on mute, am I?
No, you
guys
guys
is acting weird again. I just want to get out in front of it before I mess up again this time. You guys, you're on mute. I'm like, I don't know. My mic's acting all weird. But I literally just walked in from the kids' basketball game, so I don't have like any real thoughts besides like junior high basketball's fun. I've always watched like the Pee-wee basketball or whatever, you call it. We call it junior jazz here. I'm sure everyone has their own version of it. That's kind of boring. Junior high games are fun. Like I never went when I was in junior high. I'm like, I should have probably done that.
Yeah, we're going from that point where it's like our kids are just cute. Oh, it's nice watching them play. To starting to get competitive, Mitch. I can tell that with both of our kids. And I'm sure JB's just back there starting his spreadsheets for his kids get older. His time is coming.
In January, I'm coaching Johnny's team, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh.
Either it's going to allow us to really thrive and build our bond and relationship, or he's not going to want to look at me. So we'll see how that goes. You better believe I'm going to have the spreadsheets.
Right? You're going to have like your iPad there with doing the analytics in game, and he's crafting some strategies or what?
Oh, yeah. You better believe it. All right. Speaking of strategies, tonight we want to spend some time talking about the dynasty quarterback landscape. And we wanted to spend time talking about just the tiers overall, but instead of focusing on my tiers, which are part of the DD Fantasy Football community, or anybody else's specific rankings, just for a frame of reference, for discussion's sake, we went into Fantasy Calc's rankings and kind of tiered things together based on the value that these quarterbacks are sitting at. And, you look at it and there's a lot of things to take away, and we have specific guys we want to talk about. But Mitch, just in general, what stands out to you the most? Not a specific player, but what stands out to you the most when you look at these tiers and the way we've seen the first 10 weeks of this 24 season go by?
It's kind of how average a lot of the veteran quarterbacks have been. Like Josh Allen has been amazing. Lamar Jackson's been amazing, right? Outside of them, Burrow's been good, but there's no one to really fall in love with veteran-wise. So now you see all these rookies either maintaining their value because even though they've played bad, or these rookies are really gaining value because all these veterans are so bad. And I think the tiers are the best way to attack dynasty. Like I love, pun intended, the theory behind this, because there are players to where I believe, and I've said this before on many shows, to where players are ranked this way because they're default. They're defaulted there because they can't really go higher because they're not elite enough, but they're in a good enough place to hold their value, but we don't love them. And I think that's a lot of the quarterbacks, to where you could tear down in a lot of situations and you could get more value on your roster, and you could get, and you're not losing anything points per game wise. So like talking about DD fantasy, the offseason, I love going into this and looking at the war tool, because this is how you find like the little edges you could get in your team. And I think right now is a great time to do it because you have so many contenders and rebuilders. Now it's not a bad time to go out and get a couple of these players that I DM to John in the notes.
And Mitch, you always mention this. I remember you speaking about it with running backs a few years ago, and the one that really stands out to me is Javonte Williams. Like at the time, he was dynasty running back 3 or 4 by default almost, because he was young enough, he was producing enough, and even if they're not giving you that elite fantasy production, as much as we want to say age doesn't come into play, it comes into play for a lot of people. But Dan, I want to turn this over to you because for the most part, you are a little bit more win now centric. And I would say I have gravitated more that way over the last couple years where, going through your tiers, going through your rankings, you are able to get edges that way and gain within the margins, but you also have to make the assumption that your tiers or your values are correct because you could pivot within a tier, but are you really pivoting down to a player within the tier or should that be the start of the other tier? But anyway, I digress. So Dan, when you look at these tiers, do you think there's any edges and advantages to be had when we start comparing age to production? Maybe it's the contract.
JB, I'd be guessing these fantasy calculator tiers, with maybe certain exceptions, aren't too far off from yours and I's or Mitch's. Like when we look at our rankings, the guys that were just nobody wanted or you don't really want on your roster is kind of towards the later half. The elite is the elite. But I feel like there's a lot of fluidity in it. Like I think a lot of it is team specific. I'm counting like 15 NFL teams that are just poor right now. And they are the teams that when you look at their fantasy quarterbacks, I just don't feel warm and fuzzy about whether it's because of the quarterback himself or because of his situation. Where those teams that are contenders, I feel a lot better about. You look at a Jaden Daniels who was, the 102 in most drafts going in is now looking like the clear 101, and it's because Washington has just changed that team around. And while Caleb was in most cases the 101, you're not quite feeling that good about it because the Bears are really struggling and it's impacting his play. So I think a lot of this is changed just based on the team dynamics that we could probably get into more tonight as we look at these quarterback situations.
And Dan, this is something that you've talked about for years now, kind of the franchise stability in the situation, not just with quarterbacks, but in general. And speaking about dysfunction, and I got to say more and more when you look at it, that's something that a lot of people are taking into consideration when going through rankings or maybe going through tiers. And it's great to see Dan's face get a little bit clearer over there. You're looking good, Dan. Look at those. Look at that smile over there. But let's get into it a little bit here. And the first tier right off the bat, again, going through, if you go over to Fantasy Calc, and we reference this pretty much every episode, but you go to Fantasy Calc and these are based on actual trades. Now, asterisk, you have to be able to kind of weed through some of it because you look at some of the trades and it's like, how was that a real trade? Or maybe it's a situation where there's a league where if you beat a team, you steal a player, like you see some random trades, or it's a dispersal in the offseason where players are just getting moved to correct the roster. So it kind of gets funky in some regards, but based on the sheer volume of trades that are going through, I think it's a solid resource to at least give you a baseline. So going through these tiers and being able to clump these guys together, and Dan, you DM me and you're like, JB, some of these tiers are super small. Like there's one guy in this tier. I didn't make it, Dan. I didn't give them their value, but let's start. Tier 1, quarterback 1 through 3, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels. Mitch, what stands out to you here?
You have two truly elite players and the young guy that we hope is elite. Like, I'm not going to say a bad thing about Jaden Daniels on the show because I think he's done everything and more than what we've expected for him as a rookie. But he's there with the two best fantasy quarterbacks and honestly 2 out of the top 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I love Jaden Daniels, but to give him that value, I can't do it because I don't think he is that elite of a prospect. Sorry, that elite in fantasy compared to Lamar and Josh Allen. I think their upside is just so intense that I would much rather have Jaden Daniels just down one tier with like a Jalen Hurts. Like they're right there, but they're just not Josh Allen and they're not Lamar Jackson. Like if you could just bump him down, and I mean, his value doesn't really have to drop, but talking about tiers, there is not a world that I'm going to have a fantasy startup that, let's say it started today, that I would take Jaden Daniels over Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson.
And that's kind of what I look at. Like, if given the choice, would I take Jaden Daniels over either of those players? And we could look at it from, hey, you're in one league, you're in one startup. Would you do it? But especially from a portfolio perspective, if you have, let's say, 50 leagues or even 20 leagues, is there ever a situation just to diversify that you would go Jaden Daniels over the other two? And if the answer is no, I don't think you can have those players tiered together then. It doesn't make sense. And then, like in every situation, I would be willing to add to Jaden Daniels to get to those other two. And not to say what Jaden Daniels isn't doing, is doing isn't impressive. It's super impressive. In +4, -1 scoring, he's at 19.2 points per game. That's 8th. Obviously super young, 23 years old. You have Lamar Jackson putting up 26 points a game. Josh Allen a little over 20. And a lot of people look at Josh Allen and they're like, he's having kind of a down year, and he's still a top 5 quarterback. And we're talking about two guys that are 27 and 28 years old. So it's not like we're talking about 35-year-old quarterbacks that are losing their edge. Dan, do you think there needs to be a gap here when looking at Lamar and or Josh Allen and or Jaden Daniels?
I think there does with Jaden Daniels. Like, isn't this CJ Stroud all over again? Like, look how he just rocketed last year, and it was like this elite guy. I know there's a little challenge flag because he maybe not be that high because of the rushing, right? He wasn't a rushing
the rushing upside, yes.
All right, but he was tiered up quite a bit based on his performance last year and being that new shiny toy, and he had great value in startups this year. Now the Texans are struggling a little bit, and that luster's a little bit gone. So I think we got to be a little slower to anoint Jaden Daniels of like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen quality, because there are two just elite quarterbacks on organizations that are really stable and have their just year after year production where they're just safe. Their talent and safe. The player productivity and talent is matching the ownership and the ball club. It's just a healthy culture. Where the Washington, this is all new, man. This is all new. So I would just peg him down one tier is what I put in my notes in that DM to you, JB. Love Jaden Daniels. I'm just a little slower to put him in that super elite tier 1 category.
Now, there's not really a question associated with this, but I was thinking about this on my drive home from the office today, and this is not a joke. I'm sitting there in traffic, sitting there at red lights, and I'm thinking about Dynasty Theory. That's all I'm thinking about, guys. And let me know what you think about this. So these guys are tiered together from a fantasy calc perspective. So these are their prices that they're trading at on the market. If I have assets, and you look at the trades that we have listed here for Jaden Daniels that we'll talk about in a minute, but if you have these assets and you try to get a Josh Allen, there's a good chance that one of two things. One, Josh Allen is on a contending team, so somebody's not looking to split him up into all these young pieces and or picks, and the same for Lamar Jackson, or they want more for them. So as a result, they're not necessarily trading in a lot of leagues, and they're not actually available. So if you're looking at production, if you're looking at organizational potential stability, if you're looking at upside, a lot of people then are going to be targeting Jaden Daniels. And I think because people may have tried to get Lamar and or Josh Allen and were unsuccessful, now maybe when they go to try to acquire Jaden Daniels, the price is inflated because the market is just completely gone on those top two quarterbacks. And as a result, Jaden Daniels is elevated from that value perspective. Like, does that make sense at all? Like, kind of supply and demand, you're after an elite quarterback. The first two aren't available. And as a result, like you see in auctions sometimes, I think, like you see like, okay, Lamar goes for this price, Josh Allen goes for this price. And if people missed out, you oftentimes will see a third or fourth quarterback go for more expensive than those guys
Oh, yeah.
because the teardrop is happening. So I kind of look at it in that same way. Any other thoughts here on this top tier of quarterbacks?
I like your supply and demand theory. Like when I look at my rankings, after the top 18, and that might be generous, I don't really want anybody. And it's not that I don't have those guys after 18 in my lineups, but I don't feel good or comfortable about any of them. And then after really the top 11, 12, I'm feeling very less elite. And again, the higher in that top 12 you go, the better, JB. So I think when you see rosters with like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and I'm sure we could all add a few more names that have just been consistent year in and year out, you're really missing out if you don't have them. Or you're just really being extra strategic to compete without having them. So supply and demand is a good point. I definitely, want those upper echelon quarterbacks a lot more because there's not a lot of them.
And this isn't to say you can't find success with other quarterbacks. We all have teams where we have built really strong foundations elsewhere. And at a quarterback position, you're looking at like, we've talked about a Baker Mayfield and a Kirk Cousins, and you're probably doing just fine, especially if it's a +6 passing touchdown league. But anyway, let's get into some Jayden Daniels trades. Mitch, I want to start with you.
Okay.
And then based on a few requests, throwing the trades up here because I know we're going super quick. Sometimes it's not easy to follow, and I get that. So, Mitch, first up, Jayden Daniels for Drake May in a 25 first, 12-team Superflex. And if there's a pick involved, like it's 25 first, where do things switch for you? Where does that pick have to be?
Look, I want a mid to early 25 first. So you're getting Hunter, GNT, McMillan, you're getting quarterback 1, whichever, right? You're going to have multiple outs there. That's going to add to May. I think May is a really good quarterback. We've seen it so far in the last 2 weeks. Not the fantasy contributor that Jayden Daniels is yet, but I think there's hope there, and he's young enough to where I am willing to tear down in this scenario.
Dan?
For me, I like Jayden Daniels. My concern is with the New England situation. It's one of those not stable organizations that I'm just not confident they're going to turn around. They could, and believe me, I'm with you, Mitch. I know you like Drake May a lot, and you've got a lot of shares with them, and I feel good about those shares. I just think when we're talking about maybe JB, your supply and demand, that opportunity to tier up, I would just want to tier up for Jayden Daniels. So I'd be willing to move May in that first and take the Daniels side.
Yeah, for me, looking at it, Jayden Daniels for Drake May and the 25 first, it would have to be an early 25 first for me to really be interested. And at this point, we get trade polls in the DD Fantasy Discord all the time, and you see it on Twitter or, wherever. And at this point, we have a general idea of where that pick is going to be if it's 2025. So if it's a locked in non-playoff first, I could certainly be interested. But preferably an early 25 first in Superflex formats if I'm going to even entertain the idea of moving Jayden Daniels here. And I know
the thing though, right, is it's a mid 25 first, let's say, with May for Jayden Daniels. None of us are doing that and giving up Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, right? So I just think it kind of goes to the point of like, it's kind of the hedge on Jayden Daniels at this point, because like if you want me to give up Josh Allen, you're trading me May, you're adding 2 picks on top of it, minimum. And that's just how I see it.
Yeah, and that speaks to the break there in the tiers. All right, Mitch. Jayden Daniels for Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, and 3 26 first, 12-team Superflex start 11. Can you imagine this trade 10 weeks ago?
No.
I would have said you're off your rocker. Go get your head examined. All right.
Yeah, so, this is a Josh Allen trade. I 100% giving up Jayden Daniels for 3 26 first and pieces added on.
I agree. How many times have we seen in the past? Like, I feel like the market's changed a little bit, but there used to be a lot more of those offers where people were just blowing out whatever they can to get the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, and none of those trades have ever really, to me, materialized when you give this much. And because those guys are going to get injured at some point, or they're going to have off seasons, or the Trevor Lawrence or Anthony Richardson, this deal might just be competitive enough where those 3 firsts are just too much to pass up.
Does quarterback scoring come into play at all here for either of you?
No.
Start 11 helps, though, too. That's the other one. You're getting 5 dudes there, man, in a start 11 league. And I'd even think about moving one of them after this. Like, if I got that 5-person package, maybe I move Anthony Richardson or, move one of those future first to get something.
Well, and here's the thing, too. Like, you might be able to do a secondary trade here, a little cascade effect, and do Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, and a small piece for maybe a Justin Herbert somewhere. He's a dude that's in green on the sheets. Like, I'm still looking to invest in him. I think he's undervalued. And we've talked about Justin Herbert countless times on the show over the last month and a half, 2 months. Even Brock Purdy, if you want to do something involving him, and then you're adding 3 firsts to that. Yeah, even though it's 2026, that's just way too much to give up. Don't forget, if you're watching the show, hit the like button. And then this trade specifically, I want to know people's thoughts. So drop it in the comments below. Is that too much to give up for Jaden Daniels? Or are we looking at this all wrong and Jaden Daniels should, in fact, be tiered with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? All right, Mitch. Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin going with that Washington stack for Dak Prescott, Jalen Waddle, a 25 first and a 26 first, 12-team Superflex start 10.
Look, I brought up Dak to talk about later in the show because I'm not.
So did Dan.
I don't even like where he is in the tiers. But you're doing 2 firsts on top of Jalen Waddle, who is going Waddle, more than Terry McLaurin in the offseason. Terry McLaurin's just getting more. Yeah, you're getting the stack, but I'm taking Dak here. It's because I know what I can do with this 25 first and the 26 first. It's not like I have to go out there and choose players. I could immediately rebuild my team with 2 extra picks on top of what I'm already doing. And yes, I'm missing out on the stack of Jaden and Terry, but I think I could do a lot more with that, with the package.
Dan?
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I'm just fast forwarding to next season. I anticipate Dak being like, I know this kind of injury, like he will be healed, he'll be fine. This isn't like a knee injury where I'm, really extra concerned, even though I'm not liking, Dak's lack of mobility this year. But
no, it's just the hamstring coming off the bone, like you're getting ready to carve up a Thanksgiving turkey and the meat's sliding right off.
I've done that injury before as wide receiver running a post corner, man, and it hurts. It hurts a lot, and it takes a while to get back, but he will get back. And I just think next year Dallas will fix some things. He'll be a big producer. You're getting Waddle, and what really makes the deal is those 2 firsts. Like, you give me those 2 firsts, I'm loving that. I just think it's too much of a package for even the great Jaden Daniels.
All right, Mitch, last one here. Jaden Daniels for Kyler Murray and Devontae Smith, 10-team Superflex start 11.
See, for me, this one I'm going with Jaden Daniels. I'm not a Kyler guy. I haven't been for a few years, and I love Devontae Smith, but that's not enough for me to move off Jaden Daniels.
Dan?
Yeah, Mitch, man, we're just agreeing too much. Again, just start 11. I get that, but Devontae Smith doesn't move the needle enough. It would have to be a greater receiver. I do like Kyler's situation better. He's one of those quarterbacks that kind of falls into this classification of, boy, look how Arizona's kind of become a better football team this year, and it's really helped Kyler Murray and his value. But even with that, I'm on Jaden Daniels here.
Mitch, does it change for you if we go up to a Drake London instead of Devontae Smith?
Yeah, that's enough to do it.
Okay.
Bingo.
So just up 1 tier, or a Puka, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison.
Yes.
Garrett Wilson, but the others, yeah.
Okay.
Poor Garrett.
I know.
He looked so good 2 weeks ago.
All right. So working our way down here, And it didn't seem like there were too many issues across the board with a lot of these guys. But tier 2, kind of standing alone, Jalen Hurts, he's coming in at quarterback 4 on Fantasy Calc, 26 years old, 23.5 points per game, coming in second so far this season. You got Joe Burrow right below him. Despite the limited rushing upside, he's just been absolutely fantastic. And if you were able to have that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase stack, it's just been paying dividends. Tier 4, quarterback 6 and 7, Mahomes and Stroud. It's crazy to see Mahomes drop. Like, even like, the production, it's been lacking, but just it's crazy to see it. Tier 5, quarterbacks 8 through 11, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. I know we don't have anything highlighted here, but Mitch, we're revisiting Caleb here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Does it surprise you that he's still there, or do you think he needs to be even lower?
No, I think that's the right value. And like, I'm not the biggest Caleb guy in the world. But where he is, like, I'm not going to trade him for less, right? He's around Jordan Love and Kyler and Herbert. And, we could blame the coaching staff a lot. We can blame the offensive line a lot, but there are other quarterbacks that are just out producing fantasy wise with a lot less talent around them. And like, just the sacks, I think the last 10 games he's had 16, if I remember right, or maybe it's 14 sacks the last 2 games.
He had 9 this last week against New England.
Yeah, it's an insane amount. And I do believe sacks are 98% a quarterback stat. Like, there's a point to where, hey, you're getting sacked a lot, just get the ball out faster. And he's refusing to do it at this point. And we knew this was going to be an issue going into it because this is what he did at USC. Like, and we knew this schoolyard stuff wasn't going to work well, but I still believe that he has that it factor. He has that thing that not a lot of other players have, to where I'm not willing to move him down, even though I think what you're seeing on the field looks like not quarterback 8 through 11 standard, right?
I'm glad Mitch said he still has the it factor, because I was about to throw the penalty flag at him there, because like JB, like a couple weeks ago, like he's all wishy-washy and how good he looks, and then a few weeks before that, he's down on Caleb Williams. I don't know what Mitch is on Caleb Williams these days. But if you recall the early season struggles, I said he would get better because he's doing things that certain quarterbacks can't do. Then he had like 3 great games, and I think I reminded everybody that he was still going to have some struggles because of that O-line and the coaching staff. And here comes those struggles again. I do agree with Mitch, even though 98% is a little too high, but it is a quarterback stat there. There are some self-inflicted sacks that he has to eliminate, but I think that's just being a rookie too. And again, this comes down to a coaching staff that's just throwing this kid out to the wolves, throwing the ball 30 times. Maybe he doesn't get sacked so many times if you're not throwing it so gosh darn much. Take a note from Sean Payton in Denver there and watch how he's managing Bo Nix, and how Bo Nix is just gradually getting better and is a solid NFL quarterback because his coach isn't a moron. So let's just hope it gets better in Chicago. Sorry, I had to let that out.
Dude, 30 pass attempts isn't that, like, didn't Bo Nix have a 50+ attempt game?
I was thinking, I don't remember.
But there's times it's just uncalled for, though. Yeah, but the Ravens couldn't stop anybody. It's opponent specific with Bo Nix. I feel like Coach Payton is kind of he figures out the opponent. He has a good game plan going in, and Denver's had some success where Chicago's just been a train wreck.
All right, well then tier 6, it's Drake May and Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield coming in standalone in tier 7. And then we do want to spend some time here on this quarterback 15 to 18 range.
Hold on.
Jared. Oh.
JB, I just got to get it out. One last note on that. Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. Look at how much better Arizona's been coached. They bring in a Marvin Harrison. Look what Coach Harbaugh has done with the Chargers. It's nice to see how, like, I think Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert's stock in the dynasty market has went up thanks to good coaching and some good organizational decisions.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert's been extremely efficient. I saw a graphic with his touchdown to interception ratio is like 10-1 right now or something like that, which is, I mean, extraordinary. So if that keeps up and you add a few weapons there, but then you could look to other situations, and maybe coaching change ultimately will help a player like Caleb Williams. even though you could say, well, he does have some weapons right now, but we'll see how that plays out. So Jared Goff, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua Tagovailoa. So Jared Goff, he ranks 19th in fantasy points per game. Bo Nix 13th, Trevor Lawrence 15th, Tua 22nd. All these guys, yeah, Goff's 30, but then you got Nix 24, Lawrence 25, Tua 26 years old. All of these guys still relatively young when you look at the quarterback market. Mitch, Bo Nix, what stands out to you here with him?
He's a rookie on a very well-coached team that's competing against the juggernauts right now. They're doing great, and he has rushing upside that I don't think a lot of people accounted for, to be honest. So for me, like right now, he's in a tier with Jared Goff, who's old and doesn't run, Trevor Lawrence, who, you know, some people have said it for a while now, isn't very good, and Tua, who can't run. I don't see there's any reason why Bo Nix shouldn't be above Baker Mayfield. He should be right next to Drake May and Brock Purdy in that tier, right on the cusp of being almost a top 10 quarterback, but just not quite there. So for me, my takeaway with this is if I can trade away a Kyler Murray, but get a Bo Nix and a plus on top of it, that's a move that I want to make every single day.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that pre-draft bias.
Mm-hmm.
And
of course it is.
Whenever he was drafted, like Bo Nix is one of those guys that it seems like based on his production, just because of what people had in their mind when he came out, like it's kind of like the Josh Allen thing. And I'm not saying Bo Nix is Josh Allen.
Same. I see no difference.
I'm not making that comparison by any means. But if you remember, it took the market a decent amount of time to catch up on Josh Allen. And I know draft capital is very different in this situation for Brock Purdy, but like if Brock Purdy had better draft capital, he's a quarterback.
He's over Jordan Love, that's for sure.
He's quarterback 6 on the year.
Yeah.
But people see the draft capital, they have that preconceived notion of what he is, and that sticks with people. And no matter what they do right now, you're always going to have retractors and folks that are saying, well, eventually he's going to be what I thought he was going to be. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it limits your market. And ultimately the overall price is driven down because, again, goes back to supply and demand. Dan, has Bo Nix shown you enough to kind of say, hey, Coach Dan, I need to be higher than that quarterback 15 tier?
I think he has. And as I look at that Pittsburgh Steelers helmet behind you there, JB, I think there's a lot of similarities. And look what Denver's doing, as I mentioned before. Look what Pittsburgh's done with their quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that have struggled elsewhere, all right, especially Justin Fields, who couldn't pass. They had a 4-1 record with them. It's the same thing in Denver. And I think the other piece that stands out to Denver to me is, other than Cortland Sutton, who they have, guys. He's doing this with Sutton and a bunch of average Joes. Even Javonte Williams is kind of tearing down. They're just, SDM kind of got the burn this week, and Javonte Williams had one run. I'm sure I mangled his name, and that's why you're making that funny face, JB. But you know what I'm saying? There's just nobody really big there. So I think with an offseason of free agency and another draft, it should only go up for Bo Nix. The only thing you worry about is, teams will get some game film on him, but I think it's, again, a good head coach and offensive coordinator that'll make some adjustments and keep Bo Nix trending up.
Yeah, despite kind of the emergence of Audric Estime.
Thank you.
I had to say something because God knows I've never made a mistake ever. So I got to point out every single mistake you two make. Okay. But yeah, outside of Cortland Sutton, there really isn't much. There's not much to work with. And Bo Nix, he struggled to start the season, but he was one that his price point was lower to begin with. So it wasn't as big of a loss from a value perspective as the struggles that Caleb Williams has endured up to this point, despite having that really nice 3-game stretch. But Bo Nix, I'm with Mitch. Despite the 50 interception game this week from Jared Goff. He just threw another interception right now, actually.
Yeah, it was tipped though, so it's not his fault.
I have Goff and Nix tiered together, but you said you have him above Baker. I have him tier with Baker, so I certainly don't have Baker ahead of Nix. And then Lawrence and Tua, I'll certainly add to either of them to get Nix. And I don't know if you have to add all that much, but
while you're coughing, JB, I got to say, you mentioned Baker, and I don't disagree with you that Bo Nix shouldn't be ahead of him because of age, and we have seen some shaky seasons for Baker if the team situation isn't right. But, man, he is for real. Like, I have watched so many Tampa games. I don't know. I think because probably DraftKings and Tampa Bay has just been a high-scoring machine because their defense can't stop anybody. And I feel bad for Baker because he pours his heart out, has incredible statistics, and ends up losing every game by, like, less than 3 points. But he's legit in fantasy as long as Tampa Bay keeps doing well.
I mean, you talk about the weapons that he's had. You lose your top 2 receivers, and not just your top 2 receivers, but 2 fantastic receivers, and he's still been able to produce. All right, Dan, Bo Nix and Najee Harris for Kyron Williams and a 25 first, 12-team Superflex start 9.
I went with Nix and Najee here. Like, I always kind of take that principle of, hey, we don't know when or what that first is going to be, and I don't want a chance of just giving away a quarterback if I know I'm not getting one. So and Najee's looked well. Kyron is a stud. It's nice getting a first. I'm going to give the edge to Nix and Najee. But that can be swayed based on how high that pick is and roster needs.
Yeah, I completely agree. My one hiccup here is Najee added with Nix. Like, the trade doesn't make like a whole lot of sense for me, right? Because it's like the guy picking up Kyron probably is looking for a better running back. They're getting the 25 first on top. But then the other side's getting, I don't think anyone really loves Najee, but they're getting Bo Nix. It's just a weird trade. I will go Bo Nix and Najee as well, but I would love just a different piece than Najee on that Bo Nix side.
I actually lean the Kyron side here. I certainly get the appeal here, and I don't think it's very far off, especially if that first ends up being super late. But we talk about it like with it being a start 9, I want that guy that's going to give you a little bit more of an edge at the positional aspects. So at running back, I want Kyron over Najee. And the first, and I think the gap between Kyron and Najee closes that gap between Bo Nix and the first. But again, depending on where that is, it's certainly going to be a difference maker. What's interesting for me, guys? Like, a lot of the times you'll look at trades and you think about it, and a lot of people bring this up, and it's like, okay, if I'm trading a quarterback for a pick, well, can I replace the quarterback with that pick? And when you look at this class right now, if you're moving a quarterback, and Mitch, we talked about this over a year ago on Dynasty Theory, with the quarterback class and how in 2025 it very well may lead to seeing bridge quarterbacks getting a little bit more of an opportunity. Maybe Sam Darnold gets picked up elsewhere, and we'll get to him in a second. But like, if you're trading a Bo Nix for a package with a 25 first, can you replace Bo Nix? Well, we might only get 2 first-round quarterbacks. Yeah. It might be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Like, that's a realistic possibility. And because of the quarterback landscape, especially with the way the class fizzled out from a few years ago with Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, I think that's in the back of people's minds. You get a kind of a subpar quarterback class. Well, yeah, they're young, but look at how it played out. So I think it's always an interesting dynamic if you're like this year, if you're moving a running back for a first, you're probably going to be able to replace that running back if that's what you were looking to do. Oh, it's hard to do whenever you have like a weaker quarterback class. All right, Dan, Bo Nix for Mitch's main man, Dalton Kincaid, 12-team Superflex, start 11 PPR, 2 PPR for tight ends.
Mitch is like, this is Dan's main man. Don't throw that shade on me, John. This breaks my heart, but I would have to go Bo Nix. And I guess that speaks to how much he's kind of how we believe he should be a little bit higher in the tiers. I love Kincaid. I think he got hurt last game, but he hasn't really been a red zone guy and getting the volume we want. Still love him, but just I'm not giving up a quarterback. No way.
Bo Nix. Not close.
And I say that in jest because, Mitch, a few weeks ago, you brought up Dalton Kincaid as a guy that you might be looking to sell at their current price. Dan, I'm very interested to see where you are here. Bo Nix for the hammy-less Dak Prescott and the formidable Mac Jones 12-team Superflex.
Now, let me just get like a new AI tool and just like make Mac Jones disappear here because it's irrelevant. I would take Dak Prescott over Bo Nix just right now. It's my guy. I'm loyal. I'm not letting this hamstring. He's got CD Lamb. They're going to draft another playmaker. I'm going to still lead with Dak.
Man, I am excited for when we talk about Dak here soon. But I'm going Bo Nix. Yeah.
I also, listen, I am over 20% exposure across my dynasty portfolio on Dak Prescott for most of the year, especially the offseason. I had him in green, being a player that I was looking to buy on my dynasty tiers. But with the emergence of Bo Nix and the current market on Dak Prescott, especially with the fact that he's going to be missing the rest of the 24 season, excuse me, I'm going to take Bo Nix here. And last one, Dan, Bo Nix for 25 first.
I go kind of the same as even in that Najee Kyron first trade earlier. I need to know I'm going to get a quarterback back. We talked about that quarterback class. It's got some risk this year. I'm going to go with Bo Nix, but depending on my roster, I could be swayed depending on where that first is. But I'm going to say Bo Nix.
Yeah, it's the 106 for me. If you give me an earlier, like if it's guaranteed a non-playoff first, I will take that over Bo Nix because I know what I could do with that pick. If it's a later one, I'm just going to take Bo Nix and know that I have a starting quarterback for the next 4 to 5 years.
I feel like in these trades, whether it's the one up above with Kyron or this one, like why would someone give us that top 5, like that top 5, top 6 first? Like I just don't think that's realistic. That's why I'm assuming it's probably going to be mid-late, but I think 106 is the good threshold there, Mitch. That would sway me.
I mean, it could certainly be a situation where somebody has somebody else's pick, or it's a really tight league when it comes to the quarterback market. So that's something to look at as well. But I think overall, like I would need it to be an early first. Even if it's like 107, 108, I would go Bo Nix. And certainly he's been on a nice little run from a fantasy perspective, and that can all change very quickly. We saw how high things went for Caleb Williams after that 3-game stretch that we mentioned earlier, and it changes very quickly. You know, the crowd can turn on you. All right, tier 9. All right, this is Dan's moment here. Tier 9, quarterback 19 to 21. This is crazy to me. JJ McCarthy, okay. I know like Sam Darnold producing up until these last couple of weeks. People were excited because of the weapons in Minnesota. JJ McCarthy seemingly stepping into a really good situation from a coaching perspective, stability, whatever you want to call it. Dak Prescott, you know, it wasn't the best season up to this point. 31 years old, coming off of an injury for next year, obviously. But then he's tiered with Anthony Richardson. I would hand deliver any Anthony Richardson share I have. I will put a bow on it. I will pay for, I said hand deliver, so I don't even have to pay for shipping because I'll pay for premium gas to get him out there. Give me Dak Prescott every day of the week. I don't know how these guys are tiered together.
I just think Anthony Richardson's value hasn't caught up to what's happened yet. I think it's dropped as we've seen. If you go look on the trend, it's continually dropping. It just hasn't fallen to where it's actually, going to level and slowly come back up a little bit. I think it's still in that free fall.
Yeah, but Dak doesn't belong in this tier either. I mean, he's 31, not 39. He was top he was a top 12, top 10 quarterback entering the year. Yes, Dallas has fallen apart. I get that. But I think it's fixable fantasy-wise, and it's just a bad hamstring injury. The dude's going to be back. Like, Richardson can't hit the broadside of a barn. I'm not completely out on Richardson, but Dak doesn't belong in this tier.
Look, here's my thing. We could say he doesn't belong in the tier. Who are we really taking him over? Yeah, I mean, I'll take Dak over Trevor Lawrence just because of how I feel about Trevor Lawrence. But anyone above him, I'm not taking Dak over. Like, I have – this isn't me killing the Cowboys because you're a Cowboys fan, right? Hold on. Like, the Cowboys are they're going downhill. Like, I don't see the end of the tunnel. Like, I know Micah Parsons' comments were taken out of context, right? Like, what he said about McCarthy today, for anyone who hasn't read it, it's all over Twitter. Everyone's probably seen it, right? But that's the stuff that starts to happen on franchises like Dallas's, to where, like, they didn't bring in any running backs. They knew the running back position was going to be an issue. They chose not to fix it. They went into the season with their second best wide receiver being Brandon Cooks. Their offensive line, it's all right. It's average, but it's not that elite unit that Dak played it his first 6 years in the league. Like, for me, I like Dak, but I can't put him over. I'm not putting him over Baker. I'm not putting him over Jared Goff. And it's not because I think Jared Goff's a better quarterback. Jared Goff is just in a flat out better position, and he will be for the next 2 years minimum, because that offensive line isn't going anywhere. I'm not taking him over Bo Nix. I will take Dak over Trevor Lawrence. But Dak and Tua, to me, they're close. Like, if Tua didn't have the concussion thing hanging over his head, I'd be like, I trust Miami's playmakers just a little bit more, and the coaching staff just a little bit more than what I could trust anything that's going on in Dallas right now. So I think where he's tiered is perfectly fine.
Yeah, but you're saying you would take him over, Tua because of the injury, Trevor Lawrence because of your reasons. Like, he's in that. He should be in that tier. He's not that far off from a Baker, Goff, or even, like, I get Bo Nix is 24, and it's got a long career ahead
How
of
much
him.
are you adding to Trevor Lawrence to get to Dak Prescott? Let's say Dak's healthy, though. Let's say the hamstring didn't happen. Okay. Dak's somewhat healthy. Trevor Lawrence, how much are you adding to Trevor Lawrence to get up to Dak?
Not a lot, because Trevor's only 25, and I think he just needs a coaching change too. My issue is with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't have a lot of faith. I know Jerry's senile, and you could say, hey, why would I have a lot of faith in that dysfunctional organization? But they do find a way, Dallas, to be competitive. This is 1 year in 5 that they haven't been competitive. And I think waiting so long to sign guys bit them. They were a team that needed to sign some guys. And unfortunately, the injuries derailed their season, and McCarthy just can't fix it. So, again, I don't think I think it is fixable, though. There is a lot of young talent in the nucleus there, and they're going to have a high draft pick. I think they could fix it this offseason.
Mitch poses the question. He says, well, let's say the injury didn't happen. Well, the fact of the matter is it did happen. And, Dan, the way you play Dynasty, if Dak Prescott was your quarterback too, you're not going to move him. You're not going to add to get Baker Mayfield. I call BS. I know how you play because I'm there too. But to say you wouldn't add to Dak to get Baker, like, it's not like we're taking part in a startup where the games don't matter now. These next 6 weeks, 7 weeks, they matter when you're making a push for a championship. And you can't say they don't.
But it is roster specific. I'm in no hurry to just unload Dak Prescott, or it's not even so much about making trades. It's to say, hey, he's in this lower tier with J.J. McCarthy and Anthony Richardson. I just don't see him tier there. I'm not going to penalize him because of an injury.
But that's the world we live in. The market shifts. That, like, it changes things. If Jordan Love goes down with another injury, but this time it's for the rest of the year, that market's going to shift because these next 7 weeks are critical from a dynasty perspective.
And your team may be down the you-know-what, but I'm still not going to mortgage his future. I'm going to focus on my other dynasty teams that are going to win me money, and the ROI is still going to be ahead. So, like, I'm not going to unload every Dak share. Are you going to unload every Dak share you have? You mentioned you have a high percentage of Dak shares.
Absolutely not. And it is going to be league specific. Roster construction comes into play. Yeah, no, absolutely. But
you're not chasing Baker Mayfield this week like you just told me to chase?
If I'm sitting there at 8-2, 9-1, 7-3, and I just lost my second quarterback in a super flex league, I will hand deliver Dak to get Baker Mayfield everywhere across the board. 100%, no questions asked. I will add a second. I will add,
So on those rosters that are very, very good, you would. A few specific
without
rosters.
Doubt, yes.
Not across the board.
And if I'm not contending, or I was middle of the pack and things haven't shaken out because of all the injuries, yes, then I will let Dak sit on my roster. But I'll say these other guys shouldn't be.
That's fair enough. Okay. That's enough to say he's could be tiered up. And then roster specific would depend on how you would handle Dak.
But also, like, even think about Dak, like, whenever he was producing at a top 8 rate, he was never valued like that, though.
And you always took advantage of that.
I always took advantage, yes. You're absolutely right. All right, let's get into some of the Dak Prescott trades. Mitch, I want to start with you on these. Dak for 25 first.
Dak.
What if it is
106? Taking the 106.
That's the money spot there for me.
That is the money spot.
Is that fair, Dan?
That is fair. And I think that speaks to, I think a year ago, we said last year's rookie class was the exception. This year's rookie class would not be last year, and it's proven so.
All right. Mitch, Dak Prescott for Michael Penix in a 25-second, 12-team Superflex start 9.
I was going to bring up where Michael Penix is tiered. I don't buy it at all. I'm going Dak Prescott. That's not close for me.
Yeah, same here. Even though I got my first Michael Penix share this week, I'm proud of that. But yeah, Dak clearly here.
It's something in the water here today, and I'm just being contrarian. Like, I'm taking Dak here. No, I'm taking Dak. But I actually have no issue with where Michael Penix is tiered. That's just my journey,
man. It's what he is. Like, we haven't seen him. We don't know if he's good, but we have him in the same tier as Kirk Cousins. It's okay. He's in the same tier as Geno Smith. All right, sure. If you want to do that, you go right on ahead. It's not what I'm doing in Dynasty.
But again, like, if you're not contending and there's a market to do something involving a Geno Smith and a Penix, I mean, Geno Smith is sitting here. He's currently a top 12 quarterback, but I'd be listening.
Well, I see both your points. And I think for Mitch, though, like, how do you wait 2 years? That's a problem with Michael Penix. Like, if you knew he was going to be the guy next year, okay, maybe different conversation. With Dak, you don't. You're expecting Kirk Cousins to be there for at least one more year. But I did make this trade this week. I traded C.J. Stroud. That was before this weekend's games. I traded
Michael Penix straight up.
Not quite. But it was a blockbuster. I traded Stroud, Tank Dell, George Pickens, and then tossed in the Saints tight ends, Juwan Johnson and Murrow. I got Michael Penix. I got Geno Smith to hold me until Michael Penix is ready. I got CeeDee Lamb. I got Jake Ferguson, who I really needed a tight end in that situation, and Schoonmaker to back up Fergs. So,
I like that trade.
Yeah, I thought it was a good one. I'm going for both teams. I can see why he wanted Stroud, and Pickens is a stud, and Tank. I still like Tank Dell, but to get Lamb and then a quarterback to be good for 2 years, hopefully, and then Penix when he's ready.
No, I can live with that one. Hey, who's moving my mouth?
I'm not trying to hurry it along, I swear.
All right, Dak Prescott for Aaron Rodgers and Amari Cooper, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR. Mitch.
Dak Prescott, biggest hammer in the world.
Yeah, it's a smash here, man. Aaron Rodgers is looking like toast, and Cooper's not looking too shiny either right now.
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. And then we'll go over to this next tier, quarterback 22 to 26. It's Kirk Cousins, who, yes, he's too low. He should not be in this tier. I agree. Sam Darnold, Michael Penix, Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford. You both wanted to talk about Sam Darnold. So, Dan, what stands out to you here? Right now, in +4, -1 scoring, he's at 16.9 points per game, 14th for the season. He's 27 years old, seemingly playing himself into a contract somewhere next year. And we just talked about maybe the 2025 quarterback class helps him achieve that goal to get that contract elsewhere.
My issue here, and I'm guessing it's similar to Mitch's, is he doesn't belong in this tier with these quarterbacks. He belongs in those other kind of gamble type of quarterbacks. I mean, he could be no different than Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, any of those guys. Yeah, he's had some good moments this year, but if you watch this last weekend's game versus the Jags, where I thought Darnold was going to win me a ton of DraftKings money, especially with Bijan in my lineup, it didn't happen because he couldn't move the ball versus the stinking terrible Jags. And every quarterback's allowed to have a bad game. I'm not putting it on bad game, but he's good for a few of those a year. There's no guarantees he's going to get a starting job next year. I think he's played well enough over the course with good coaching and a good system that he'll get looked at, but there's no guarantees. He doesn't belong in this class.
No, I agree. I mean, we're looking at these guys, whether it's maybe a 1 or 2 year window, but Russell Wilson, I love Russ and I have so much Russ, but you have to be able to look at these situations for what they are. Could he give you 2 more years? Sure. But Russ, Stafford, Carr, Rodgers, like Darnold shouldn't necessarily be ahead of any of them. So the fact that he is and again, this kind of goes with the Anthony Richardson conversation and the point that Mitch brought up, how much of it is the market catching up a little bit. Is he going to continue to slide? I think in a week's time, we're talking about him in that 27 to 30 range as opposed to that 22 to 26. Mitch, is your thought process kind of similar there? Just like, why are we investing? I say we as the Dynasty community investing so much in a quarterback with such uncertainty.
Yeah, Sam Darnold for me, if you had him on his roster and he's starting for you, cool, that's great, especially if you have a league that doesn't hurt you with interceptions, because the interceptions he's throwing, he's right around his career average as far as interception percentage. He's a little bit over it, but it's not really out of whack. This is who he is. It's who he's always been. And you've got a nice starter for a year. That's great. Or, hey, you just lost Stack. You can't get anybody else but Sam Darnold. Fine, go pick him up then. But to me, I don't like Derek Carr. I like having him on my rosters, right? I would rather have Derek Carr on all of my rosters than having Sam Darnold. And it's not like a close tier break. We're talking about 5 to 6 quarterback spots, which is a huge difference in that lower tier. I mean, yeah, I'll take him over Daniel Jones just because I don't know if Daniel Jones will start, but he's just a guy to me. He's that bye-week fill-in. I put no value on him because I don't want him on my teams going into next year. I'm okay having him on your roster, right? He is never going to be a guy that I'm going to go look, be like, oh, hey, he's quarterback 26. It's a time to go buy. That's not going to happen for me. I don't care if he goes out and throws four touchdowns and no interceptions next week. This is who he is. And if JJ McCarthy is going to be healthy come December. This isn't a long lasting injury. So he'll be able to be throughout all the offseason getting all the reps. And yeah, maybe Sam Darnold gets a chance to start somewhere, but we've seen what bad spots can do to a quarterback. And Sam Darnold is the perfect example. Put him in a great spot with a great coaching staff with Justin Jefferson. He looks adequate. You take him out of that, I think that adequate's just out the window.
All right.
I think only a few quarterbacks are going to land somewhere. There'll be musical chairs, and someone's going to get stuck looking for a backup job. And it could be Darnold again. He might even re-sign to Minnesota and end up as a backup.
All right, Mitch, Sam Darnold for a 25-second 12-team Superflex start 10. There were a lot of these trades, and 2 weeks ago, we were seeing him traded for a first. It actually popped up in a discussion over on the DD Fantasy Football Discord, and we had folks talking about moving a first for him.
Yeah, I would never move a first form at any point in the season. Early to mid 25-second, I'm taking that. A late one, I'll kind of keep Darnold because I know there's someone out there that's willing to pay a higher price.
Yeah, I probably made one of these trades this year, but it was only because I needed Darnold. If you want a 1-year rental and you're in it to win it, and you have to have that quarterback production, you're tying him to Minnesota. But yeah, mid-late would be the goal of that second round pick.
Yeah, if you lost a Dak, if you maybe are about to lose a Lawrence,
yeah,
push comes to shove. I mean, I pulled the trigger on 2 trades involving Aaron Rodgers, and week 10, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, what am I doing here? But push comes to shove, you got to make a move. You got shit or get off the pot. And I stay on the pot, and I,
good to know.
Took care of business.
TMI.
I know. You know me. I'm an open book. All right, Mitch. Sam Darnold in a 25 third for Brandon Ayuk, 12-team Superflex, start 9 PPR.
I mean, you changed that 25 to a second. I'm still going Brandon Ayuk. More than happy to do that.
Same.
I thought that was an easy one as well. Sam Darnold in a 25 first for Kyler Murray, 12-team Superflex, start 9. Where does
Not
the
a
first
Kyler guy, but I'll go Kyler here.
Where does that first need to be?
I mean, it's always going to be. This is we could say this for the next 4 months, right? If it's early, we're going to take the early first. So, let's just get out. But mid to late, Kyler's going to be a kind of hard guy to replace. I mean, he's going to be the starting quarterback for the next 3-4 years in Arizona. I don't love him, but I think I could do a little bit more with him than what I can with a Sam Darnold and a random 25 first.
Yeah, a little early in my draft evaluation process, but this is where 106 isn't enough because I don't want to get stuck without a quarterback and be just totally regretting losing Kyler Murray. So it probably has to be 101, 102. But I go with Kyler Murray here.
Honestly, there's a very good chance, even if you tell me that Sam Darnold in 2025 101, I might take Kyler.
No,
right.
I know Ashton Genty is just the best thing since sliced bread. I know, but
when he goes to the Cowboys, he will be.
Well, I mean, then he's the 101, not just in rookie drafts, but he is the 101 in startups. He's actually above the 101. He's like the 100. Okay. But I mean, if that 103, give me Kyler. That's not a question for me. Mitch, you can shake your head.
All right. No, it's fine. You do you. You do you.
Well, I can't wait. So, I mean, every Sunday, Mitch and I, we do Winning the Week on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. We're working on some things behind the scenes for Sunday shows after the season, but maybe we get back into the pivot point, and that's when we can really start to break down some of the rookie 101 or player, 102 or player. We had some really fun discussions over the last couple off seasons, and I think that's going to continue here moving forward. So talking about some of the tiers here, working our way through the top 26 based on fantasy calc, who's too high, who's too low, what are some actual trades that took place, where can we take advantage, where can we exploit the market, because the market certainly is it's prime to be taken advantage of. There are certainly situations out there where, as a dynasty manager, if you're staying in tune with the ever-changing market and values, there are definitely advantages to be had. Dan, for the 268th time, final thoughts. What do you got for our fantastic Dynasty Theory DD Fantasy Football listeners?
Hey, just keeping our listeners' eyes open to managing their teams down the stretch here. 2 weeks left in safe leagues to trade with 5 weeks before the playoffs start. So just be mindful of that time frame. Bye week players, weeks 11, 12, no bye weeks, week 13. Week 14, there's 6 teams on a bye week in a very crucial week. So be managing your buys, be managing your trades. And there are 15 bad NFL teams. Keep an eye on some games potentially being flexed in those primetime spots as the season goes along.
All right, Mitch, the basketball guru over there, what do you got?
A little bit. I try to be. Not really. The big thing is, John was saying, we're going to start to put names to all these positions. You listen to other podcasts, they're doing it as well. The great thing about the DD Fantasy Discord is there's mock drafts going all the time. So you could get ahead of the curve just by joining them. And you could be like, oh, hey, this is what's going on. This is who people are picking now. And you could start to get your own tiers already set before, people are really turning into the true contenders here in December when it's like, oh, trade deadline. I have to make a trade to compete. he's trading me the 108. You know what? I think the 108 could be this player. And that's how you're going to go attack it. So I just think, hey, join up the Discord. That's the most, that to me, that's the best thing about the DD fantasy website and community is just the Discord and everything you learn from it.
Say it every week, but fantastic conversations. Those different channels, different forums, a lot of different conversations going on 24/7. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this week's episode. Next week, we're going to be spending time on the running back market. And I think that's going to be some fun conversations because especially with a push towards the playoffs, we're going to see some crazy trades to talk about involving some veteran running backs that are producing. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. Make sure you hit that like button, and we'll catch everybody next week. Peace.